There you go. Good morning. How you doing? Monday morning it is. The 20th of January 2020. That's right, yeah. Only one time did I get the year wrong so far this year. Hope you've had a nice weekend. Seriously, hope you had a good weekend. After a bad defeat, always wear your colours. Wear your colours after a bad defeat. Yeah. Not a great day for the Reds of Manchester yesterday, losing to Liverpool at Anfield. Yeah, had to think about that for a second. Better weekend for Salford City though, who won. So yeah, mixed bag for us sports fans here in the Northwest. This is the newspaper review live stream, of course, YouTube. Thanks for clicking on the link and chatting away amongst yourselves there. Lovely. I'm going to read I haven't done it for a while, and I know you like the old comments to be read out, so I'll read a couple of quick comments there. Hi to Paddy Dunn. How you doing, Paddy? Brass monkeys here, says Paddy. Yeah, it's very cold here as well. Freezing fog yesterday and today. Hi to Chris. How you doing, Chris? And to Bukar Abdullahi. How you doing, Bukar? Morning, all. Good morning, Richie, the BBG. Can we call you Richard? Not if you expect to get an answer there, Bukar. Richie it is. Hi to Linda. Morning to the future Mrs. Allen. Or have you both tied the knot over the festive season? No. We haven't. Hi to Tina Fries in Denmark. Hi to Alan Barriga. How you doing, Alan? Alan says somebody reached out to you. The last American vagabond has told me to get you to reach out to him. Really? And why doesn't he reach out to me, whoever he is? I have a website, you know. There are contact details, you know. I am easily contactable, you know, Alan. So if somebody needs to contact me, that's basically how they do it. He said, get him to reach out to me for an interview. I don't reach out to people for interviews, for myself to be interviewed. If somebody wants to interview me, and I don't know why they would want to interview me, they just need to contact me through my website. Strange people. Good morning to John, Hit Wonder. Panorama is investigating some rich African corruption. Strange they can't find any corrupt folk in the UK to investigate. Excuse me, fair enough. Hi to Jane Phillips. It's mild, sunny, but cloudy in the south of Spain. How you doing, Jane? My old stomping ground. Hi to Peter James. To Jason Gage. Who's in Blackpool? John is in Blackpool. It's Baltic there. Hi to Mike Rocock in County Down. He's a QPR fan. They beat Leeds on Saturday. Or was it yesterday? What's that song again? We all ate late scum. We all ate late scum. We all ate late scum. Very clever. Hi to Liz. Thank you, Liz, for the super chat. Thank you. Morning, Richie. Your puppy is gorgeous. She is, but she's a nightmare, Liz. Lovely she is. Morning to Richard Willett. How you doing, Richard? Anne Hughes, North Scotland, chilly. Of course, it's chilly everywhere. John Sheridan, Paul Alawi, Paul Burchell. Good stuff. Lucy W. How you doing, Lucy W? To Richard Scratcher. Good. Okay. Wayne Davis. Ellie Larkin. How you doing, Ellie? Lawrence King. Good morning to Jean Annan. I would say Baltic Connemara. It can't be warm there this morning. Hi to Manzi. Hi to Maureen McAleer. Charlie Girl is on there. Steve. Okay, let's look at the newspapers. Enough of that old malarkey. Thanks again, Liz McFall. Thank you, Liz. Really appreciate that. It's a good start to the week, that. Thank you, Liz. Harry, I had no choice but to go. You're not going to hear the end of this for a while. The Sussexes walking away from the firm. It's everywhere. What are you going to do? Why is the question. Number of royal correspondents past and present could be heard on television and radio this morning, and some of them were asking the pertinent question. Why? Why really? His mother has got to be some factor in this, and I don't mean just because of the press intrusion, the media attention. I'm thinking there's a bit of Hamlet here. I know I've said this already, so I won't bore you by repeating myself. You do it often enough. I do. I can be a little bit repetitive every now and then. I take the slings and arrows of criticism. I'm well aware of it. You have to sometimes, though. That's the media trick. To barrage, to bombard people with a message until it gets into their thick skulls. And I'm not saying you're sick, far from it. But I can over-egg the pudding every now and then. That's a lovely turn of phrase, over-egg the pudding. Over-egg the pudding. I stole that from Jean Ann Crowley. The Mirror. Harry, we're so sad it has come to this. The Mirror. The Daily Mirror. There's a picture of Mo Salah. Bare-chested. Not going to say anything. We'll be back. Form is temporary and class is permanent. Devastated Harry, why I had to go, Daily Express. Yes. Okay. We'll move on because there's some very interesting things inside the papers that are not related to the parasites. The Times, Harry tells of sadness at giving up royal duties, motherhood. Divine Jesus Christ. And if you think the Mail is going to go somewhere else, no, Duke and Duchess of Netflix. Very interesting this morning. There was one interesting thing this morning when they were talking about these people, and that was that global brands will apparently be lining up to do some sort of business with the Sussexes because of their profile. Global brands, major brands, will be on the doorstep, will be ringing them around the clock to try and do some deal with them because of their following. Apparently they're very popular in Canada, where they will spend most of their time apparently, but also in the United States. And one of the things being suggested is that they want to set up some sort of production company to, I suppose, to produce their own films and documentaries, and that Netflix might do some deal with them, is what they're saying. Okay. That's in the Daily Mail. Are you fed up with it, Jar? Yeah. I'm actually not well, me. I've got to say this, not because I'm planning any absence from the radio show. I'm not, but I've got this chest infection, and I'm having to take some steroids to help me to breathe properly. Because I've had lung problems since I was a kid. Never smoked, never tried it, not even cannabis. But I've had pneumonia this is not a joke, by the way, it's not man flu. I've had 4 cases of pneumonia in my life, and twice it nearly did for me. Once when I was 15, I spent weeks and weeks in hospital, in Waterford Regional Hospital. I was in a very bad way. That was at the time of Hillsborough, the disaster. And last February, although I didn't make very much of it at the time, I had pneumonia in both lungs and I was in a severely bad condition. So when I get a little chest infection, I don't go all man flu-y, but I have to be very, very careful with it. And I have a chest infection at the moment. I can't get rid of the mucus, the phlegm, and I need steroids to help me breathe better. And at the moment I'm okay, but later on, after a few hours, I'll have to take more. So anyway, I've got a good show for you lined up later on. I'll tell you about it in a few minutes. I'm having to keep unhiding your comments there. Stop swearing. It's not clever to swear, you fucking idiots. Right, so let's have a look at the Sun then. Or did we do the Sun? Harry and Will's Meg piece. Jesus wept. Apparently the brothers Grimm hooked up and made peace, said their farewells. I don't know. The Metro, they're out, he's in. At Mass. At church, they don't say Mass in England. That's a very Catholic thing, Mass. At church on Sunday, the paedophile lover Andrew, the friend of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, was pictured with a beaming queen. They're out and he's in. It's almost like in The Godfather, when Tom Hagen asks the Godfather, what will they do with Carlo Rizzi, who married Connie, the Don's daughter? And at this stage, nobody knows that Carlo set up Sonny to be murdered. And the Don says, keep him close or something like that. Give him a job. I'm short of sons. This is after Sonny had died. I'm short of sons or grandsons. So the Queen might be saying, yeah, I need this fucker, whether I like it or not. So there you are. That's in the Metro. Alan Barriga, thanks so much for your super chat contribution. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate that, mate. That's very kind. The Guardian then revealed how Princess of Angola built $2 billion fortune. Now, I've not gotten into this morning, in terms of I've not really read the story in The Guardian, but I'm going to have a read of it later on. It's interesting, this. Very interesting. And I noted, just before I came on air, that Sky News presenter Adam Bolton was planning to get into it a little bit later on. Corruption among, well, the African establishment, let's put it that way. And there's a good story in The Guardian apparently about it. The Guardian is free to read. You can make a contribution to The Guardian, which I do. Kills me to do it, but you can't be a hypocrite. You've got to do that. I subscribe to the Times and to the Telegraph because you have to. And the Daily Mail doesn't need any subscription because it makes millions and millions of pounds a month through the Mail Online, through advertising, because Daily Mail Online is the most successful newspaper website in the world. It really is. It's unbelievably successful. But The Guardian relies on a little bit of a contribution. So I send them a few bob every month. I think it's the right thing to do because I read it, even though I scream most of the time I'm reading the article. So that's The Guardian there. Let's get rid of that and have a look at the iPaper. Cervical cancer screening upgrade. Right, we'll come back to that in a minute because there's a story in the Times about cervical cancer. It's the iPaper. I think the next one should be the Financial Times. Javid's non-alignment vow sparks alarm from Brussels and business. So, this is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sajid Javid. We are, in theory, 11 days away from leaving the European Union, with a transition period which is due to run until New Year's Eve this year. And the talk is, and the speculation is that the UK government, the UK negotiators, working for Boris Johnson, allegedly, will press home their insistence that there isn't any regulatory alignment with the European Union in terms of goods and services after this transition period ends. The transition period until the end of the year is to give them time to do a trade deal. Most so-called experts say that isn't enough time to do a proper trade deal. Johnson says it is. It remains to be seen. Okay? So we'll see. We'll see how things pan out. You know what I believe? That the UK will never properly leave the European Union. That we will end up being a rule taker, kind of, seemingly outside but not really, a kind of a vassal state. And the withdrawal agreement, of course, is basically itself is the basis for my belief that we're never going to properly leave. And if you listen back to programmes before Christmas, November, December, you'll understand why, because I outline what exactly the withdrawal agreement is and what I believe the trade agreement will look like when it all ends. But we'll leave that alone for now. Good stuff. Hi to Richard Murray. Hi to Dennis Alcorn. Hi to Teresa Smuts. How you doing, Teresa? To Sean Mack. To Mark Best. Never giving a penny to the Zionist rag, The Guardian, says Mark. Well, if you don't read it, Mark, why would you give any money to it? But if you do read it, regardless of what you might think of the editorial, surely it's incumbent upon you to send a couple of pounds a month to it. But if you don't read it, you have no reason to contribute to it whatsoever. I say to the listeners of the Richie Allen show, radio show, if you listen to it regularly, if it's a part of your lives, you should make a contribution to it. You should support it, only if you can afford it. And of course, if you can't afford it, forget about it. It matters not. Right? That's the way it should be. I use The Guardian just to see what is going on, what's being said on the progressive left about these issues. And I read it. Sometimes there are interesting things in there. So hence this programme makes a contribution to The Guardian. And will continue to do so long as we use some of the newspaper's stories. It's the way it should be, right? It's the way it should be. I think one of the things that has happened in the last few years, I think people have been conditioned, all of us now, me included, into thinking that, you know, into this kind of take what you want culture. You know, the download culture, downloading films and TV shows and music and all the rest of it. And kind of getting into a comfort zone of where I'll just take that because it's there, it's online. I won't pay for it or I won't make a contribution to it. And I have to be consistent and I have to be fair, and I think I have to avoid being a hypocrite. I can't on the one hand say, don't listen to the Richie Allen show unless you make a contribution, at least every now and then. I also have to condemn those who take films from websites, take albums from websites, or just download books from websites without paying for them. It's not good. Right, for a properly free press, independent or otherwise, people have got to pay for it, is what I believe. Anyway, there you go. That's not soapbox there now. That's not my soapbox, right? I'm not being soapbox-ish there. It's just the right thing, you know. People complain all the time about The Guardian, The Telegraph. Yeah, there's a lot of bad stuff. These newspapers aren't the institutions they once were. There was a time when they did a much better job of holding the government to account. They don't do it so much anymore, but it's still the press that we have. And I'd rather we had it than nothing at all. Do you know what I mean? So The Independent went out of print. That was a terrible thing, that. It was a dreadful thing for free speech and for democracy. And although I cringe when I read a lot of the progressive garbage in The Guardian, I dread The Guardian going out of print. I dread that happening. Or any of the other newspapers. Because that's exactly what the cabal wants, you see. Okay? Much easier to control what you see when it's online. They can't stop you going to the newsagents and picking up the Daily Mirror or the Sun, as bad as it is, or the Guardian or the Times. They can't stop you doing that. But if they all go off out of print and go online, then you've got a problem. And you and I both know, as bad as these newspapers are, at least once a week or twice a week, they publish some very, very important information, because there are still some good men and women writing articles today, and they're still just about getting into print. And as long as that continues, we should buy some newspapers. You know, do buy a paper, even if it's only twice a week. Buy a paper, read it. No harm in doing that. There's no harm in reading stuff from sources that you would ordinarily disagree with either. I don't know. Hi to Barry Murta. Thank you, Barry. Very timely there. And hi to Sharon Gale. How you doing, Sharon? I owe Sharon a bit of an apology there. I'm a shit friend. I realised that this morning. And Jean Ann Crowley will guarantee this. I can be a bit of a shit friend. I get so bogged down with what I'm doing here that I don't always return messages and calls. Not because I'm an arsehole. It's just because I'm snowed under. So I need to give Sharon a ring there and get in touch with Sharon, who's a good friend. I've not been in touch with her for ages, down there on the south coast, and she's a remarkable woman. Sharon, how you doing, kid? Nice to hear from you this morning. Let's move on then, shall we? And have a look inside the papers. Shall we do cervical cancer? Now, I'm not going to pretend to know anything about cervical cancer. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on matters medical. When I want people to talk to me about matters medical, I get GPs on the programme, or I get journalists, the likes of John Rappaport, the likes of Jeffrey Jackson, the likes of the great Ghislaine Langto in Canada, that wonderful doctor. These are people I get on, because I don't know anything about medical stuff. But I do have kind of a little bit of a brain on me. and I can do my own basic research. This is in the Times today. Right, let me get the right story up there. And it's also, as you would have noted earlier, it was on the front page of the iPaper. So, cervical cancer is on the way to being eliminated, is the article in the Times today. As an Irishman, excuse me for knocking the mic there, as an Irishman, and a proud one, despite that fucking country, which goes to the polls very soon, of course, the Irish. The Irish. Is there any Irish left in Ireland? Is there? Well, I know Jean Anna's over there. I know Sean Mack is over there. I know a few of my listeners are over there. Right, here we go. This is very important. Cervical cancer can be eliminated in this country thanks to advances in screening and vaccination, according to the NHS. It's the first time the health service has said a form of cancer can be beaten to the extent that cases become extremely rare. Public health officials described the announcement as truly momentous. A more sensitive and reliable form of cervical cancer screening has already been introduced for all women who undergo smear tests in England. This, combined with the development of a vaccine against the virus that is known to cause almost all cases of the disease, has resulted in increased confidence that the fight against cervical cancer is being won. Two things I want you to keep in mind before we have a look at some statistics. The first thing is the second paragraph. Let me just... this is the worst live stream in the history of the world, right? You know this. So here's the second paragraph. It's the first time the health service has said that a form of cancer can be beaten to the extent that cases become extremely rare. Then goes on to say the disease kills 850 women and affects 3.2 thousand people each year in Britain. Now, I don't know if Kaya Burgess, who wrote the article, made a mistake, and I think she probably made a mistake, or she's being deliberately disingenuous. I'm going to lean towards she made a mistake. It isn't 850 women each year in the UK dying of cervical cancer. It's 850 women every 2 years. Now, this is a big problem. And I got into this on a Sunday View about 2 years ago. It was an interesting little segment, that Sunday View segment 2 years ago, because I talked about statistics around cervical cancer. I'm not even going to get into the whole moral argument, which my great friend Jean Ann Crowley has mentioned before, this whole thing about promiscuity, and she makes a great point about this, this nonsense about people having promiscuous sex, young girls having sex before, willy-nilly with multiple partners and all. I'm not getting into it, but it's a very good point. I think you know what I mean. So that's in the Times today, right? It's an interesting article, right? Okay. But the statistics really do bear close scrutiny, I think. So let's have a look at the statistics. And I hope I get these in the right order now, because I can be a bit shite. Let's look at the Cancer Research Society's own figures. A lot of noise coming from outside the studio there. Here you go. Okay? This is Cancer Research UK. Let me bring it up. Okay. She was being disingenuous when she said that it's 850 cases a year. It isn't. The Cancer Research UK says deaths from cervical cancer for the period 2015 to 2017, and I did scroll down. They do mean 2015 to 2017. They don't mean 2015, 2016 and 2017, as in each individual year 850. For the time period 2015 to 2017, the amount of people killed by cervical cancer is 852. Now, that's quite staggering, really. Right? 852 people. So let's have a look at another statistic, which is very interesting. Sorry for staggering this a little bit. I just want to make sure I've got the right ones. Here is a graph which shows the percentage of women. Now, don't start screaming at me. Don't start screaming at me. I know some of these women will be very, very senior women. And I know some of these women will be young women. So we're dealing ballpark figures here. Don't hold my feet to the fire and shout at me that this is not very scientific. It's close enough what I'm doing here. It's close enough. So, in 2018, there were 33.65 million women living in the country. 33.65 million women in the country. Right, okay. Let's have a look at another statistic. So we're going to do 850 as a percentage of 33.65 million. I know it should be less than 33.65 million people. I know that, but not a lot less. Let's have a look. Here's the calculation for you. 850 as a percentage of 33.65 million is 0.002 whatever percent. Your chances of contracting cervical cancer are about as much chance as you have of being killed by a piano falling on your head, let alone being killed by it. Your chances of dying from it are astronomical. And most of us carry the human papillomavirus inside us at some time or another in our lives. So why the desperation to get more and more and more teenage girls and boys to take this bloody vaccine, when without it you're more likely to be killed by a tram on Blackpool Pleasure Beach than you are to be seriously affected by a bout or a dose of cervical cancer? And these are the questions that the mainstream media refuses to ask when discussing these issues. And of course, because this is a big story in the Times today, it's popping up on UK radio and television this morning, because that's where they get a lot of their material from, the newspapers. It's what I did when I was producing commercial radio. Shocking, this. It's shocking. We also have a clamour at the moment to roll out various jabs for children, new jabs for children, to do with hepatitis and other. Let me just bring that up there to make sure I'm on the right track there, because I've been looking at stories this morning. It's hepatitis B, isn't it? Right? Okay. Sorry now for going silent there momentarily, but I want to make sure I don't... not hepatitis, meningitis. That's right. Jesus Christ, Richie. Yes, I am tired. I knew I was going down the wrong road there with hepatitis. They want to roll out a vaccine for babies, for every baby in the country, to get meningitis B jabs, when the odds of your baby getting meningitis to begin with, number one, or number two, the odds of your baby getting seriously ill or dying as a result of contracting meningitis, again, are absolutely astronomical. But these are the points that are not being made when this comes up for discussion. Like on Radio 5 Live, they'll have a doctor on talking about the necessity to keep pushing the HPV vaccine, Gardasil, because we're doing really well against cervical cancer, so keep pushing the vaccine. But at no point does a producer say to the presenter through the in-ear, which I used to wear when I was on TV and on radio, listen, the chances of you getting cervical cancer are basically slim to none. They won't say that. Nor will anybody bring up the fact that thousands and thousands and thousands of girls around Europe have suffered terribly as a result of receiving Gardasil, and are dealing with autoimmune issues, with debilitating illnesses which have completely knocked them and changed their lives for the worst. It's crazy, dreadful nonsense, this. I don't know what else to say about it. But those are the basic statistics. Over a 2-year period, 850 people dying of cervical cancer. It isn't a problem. It's just not a problem. Right? Right. It's insane to say let's vaccinate the entire population with a preventative measure against something which they're not even unlikely to get. You just won't get. Oh yeah, but 850, yes they did. But let's say out of 27 million. Jesus Christ, like. You see where I'm going with that? Right. Shall I leave it alone there? Yes. Okay. Not the best preparation in the world there ever, but I didn't list the inserts as well as I should have done. But you get the picture. There's no need for the vaccine. None whatsoever. Even if the vaccine wasn't unsafe, which it patently is unsafe. It obviously is unsafe. Gardasil is obviously doing a lot of damage to some girls who get it. Now they want to give it to boys. It's preposterous. Okay. Alrighty. Let's move on. Couple of interesting things in the mail. Let's bring up this first. Ditch deodorant. Never wrap your food in tin foil. This is very interesting. Always paint your nails outdoors. A top doctor and anti-pollution expert reveals the secret to aging well in our toxic times. This is amazing. Exposure to aluminium. This is Jenny Goodman. Shares top tips to stay well. Sweating through exercise and sauna will eliminate toxins in your body. Toxins that you ingest through breathing the air. Through cooking and wrapping your food in tin foil. Aluminium foil, of course. Hair dye, nail polish, perfume, deodorant, hairspray, kitchen cleaning fluids, air freshener, and so on, so on, so on. A veritable toxic soup, she says. All these substances alien to the human body, but they accumulate over the years and do untold damage, causing serious harm and leaving people depleted of vital nutrients, feeling exhausted or generally unwell. Because once you ingest these chemicals and your body starts to build them up, those chemicals start to work against your body and work against any nutrition or any nutrients that you are, taking or trying to take, any supplements, anything you are doing to try and stay well. The chemicals inside the body actually working against the goodness that you might be ingesting, fruit and veg and stuff. I just think this is fascinating because she mentions tin foil, aluminium foil. I also think it's fascinating because she talks about a lot of chemicals that we ingest, and she says something incredible here. Look at that. She says, if I've got it here, is it here? I mightn't have the quote here. I mightn't have screen grabbed the quote, but she says, when I qualified as a doctor in 1982, she says, it was taboo to ask why people got ill. It was taboo to ask why people got ill. Instead, we were taught to manage symptoms using a vast array of drugs. Jenny Goodman. Now, Ghislaine Langto, GP, MD, Canada, was struck off for writing a book called The Medical Mafia, for basically saying the same thing, that modern medicine is not dealing with the causes or the underlying cause of illness. It's just treating symptoms, managing people on behalf of big pharmaceutical companies, of course, who make billions out of helping people get from point A to point B or get through day to day, to live with something rather than to try and find out why they've got that particular problem. This is very good, this. It's good. It's very good. Jenny Goodman in the Daily Mail today. And you see, this is what I talked about earlier on. We talked about the Daily Mail, the Telegraph and the Guardian, and why they're worth persevering with. Because you do get these nuggets from time to time. Right? Right. This will scare one or two people. Speaking of The Guardian, climate refugees can't be returned home, says landmark UN human rights ruling. It's unlawful for governments to return people to countries where their lives might be threatened by the climate crisis. A landmark ruling by the UN Human Rights Committee has found. It's the first of its kind, this judgment, and it represents a legal tipping point and a moment that opens the doorway to future protection claims for people whose lives and well-being have been threatened due to global heating. Now, do I need to say any more? Tens of millions of people are to be displaced by global heating in the next decade, says The Guardian. Well, says the UN human rights ruling. And they'll have to be taken in. And the host country can never say to those people, you've got to go home. This judgment relates to the case of a man called Iowan Tetayota, I think. I hope I've pronounced that right. I probably haven't. Iowan Tetayota. He's from the Pacific nation of Kiribati, which is considered to be under severe threat of rising sea levels. And he applied for protection in New Zealand back in 2013, saying that his life and the life of his family was at risk. So you've got to take me in. You get the implications of this, right? Going forward. Hence, of course, the United Nations declaring last year, December 2018, I should say. Do you remember back in December 2018 when the United Nations basically moved to make it illegal to criticise immigration? Remember that it moved to impose restrictions on what journalists could do and say when it came to talking about immigration and the impact of immigration on any given country. Remember this? Talked about it extensively. It's all in black and white. Delegitimising criticism of migration and immigration and the effects that it has on any society. And now we have, edicts from the United Nations Human Rights Committee saying that in future you've got to expect an influx of refugees into your company, refugees who are fleeing global warming. Again, I'm just not going to say any more on that because it doesn't bear repeating, really. It's staggering stuff, really. What else have we got? This won't surprise you. It's in RT today. 1% of the world's population has accumulated almost twice as much wealth as the remaining 90%. It's according to Oxfam. Oxfam does this every year, this report. The gap between the obscenely rich and the rest of us has reached grotesque proportions, according to Oxfam's annual report, which was published today. The World Economic Forum takes place in Davos this week. It begins tomorrow. You'll have Bill Gates there and George Soros. You might even have Bono. Bono might be there, telling you how to live, what you should expect. Time to Care is the name of the report, which focuses on the largely unpaid care work many women and girls take upon themselves. Says the world's 22 richest men now have more wealth than all the women in Africa combined. Yeah. This is what fractional reserve banking does, you see. And I'm tired of saying it. It's what it's meant to do. This is what European Union type unions are meant to do. This is what central banks are meant to do. They are meant to loan everybody. Individuals, like me and you. Couples, like me and my missus and you and your missus, or you and your husband. Governments, nations, and ultimately entire continents loan them into debt. So it works. Loan everybody into debt. Get everybody into debt. Debt that can never be repaid. Never feasibly be repaid. And then inflict upon people individually, collectively, and then nationally and internationally, impose upon them austerity measures to repay the debt that never really existed in the first place because you loaned them money that never existed to begin with. They can't pay the debt back because there's never enough money in circulation, because when you create the principle, like you give Greece €3 billion and then charge them interest, but you don't create the interest as well, they can never pay it back. And at that point, you say, we will have, thank you very much, all the things in your country, all the physical things, the tangible things that are worth money. We'll have them. Thanks very much. And we'll write down some of your debt. We'll write off some of your debt based on that physical, real wealth that we've taken off you. And then, what do they do with that real wealth? Well, it is sold off. To who? Well, to some of the biggest corporations in the world. Hence the 22 men have more money and wealth than all the women in Africa. Hence the 1% have more than nearly 2/3 of us. It's the way it's meant to be. It's Agenda 20, Agenda 30. It's an extinction program. Do you see the irony of the moniker Extinction Rebellion? It's amazing, isn't it? Extinction Rebellion. All these young men and women, and sometimes middle-aged men and women, all woke beyond belief, telling us that if we don't change our ways, we are going to become extinct. When really the extinction program is in plain fucking view to anybody who can see it. It's right there for you. People being eliminated through poverty. It's amazing. Extinction. This is the extinction event. But of course, it doesn't mean that the plan is to make mankind, humankind extinct. No, but to reduce the population by 2/3 or 4/5. That is the plan. Georgia Guidestones, all that stuff, it's all true. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not lunacy. They want fucking rid of us. Most of us. And they appoint politicians and give them names like the Labour Party and the Conservative Party and the Democrats and the Republicans. So you think you have a choice when every single one of those fucking politicians and parties will further that agenda. They don't care who rules, who governs. Sometimes the agenda slows just a little bit, but doesn't stop, slows just a little bit to give you the illusion of choice. Then there's a change, then it speeds up again, then it might slow down a little bit, but it speeds up again. This is how it works. And whatever about Oxfam and all the horrible questions they've got to answer about enabling paedophiles in disaster zones and all the rest of it, I'm not giving them a pass. It's good they do this report. People might start wondering why. How does it come to be that 1% of the total population of planet Earth can control more than 50 or 60% of the world's real wealth? How does that happen? This is how it happens. I've just explained it. People haven't a clue. Most people haven't a clue. Lots I could get into. This made me laugh in the Times. Misogynist truckers need women at the wheel. We need women. There is a shortage of truck drivers in the UK. About 60,000. From what I understand, the work pays well. It pays quite well. You know, you live well on a haulage driver's salary. You've just got to get the licence. And I believe it's fairly difficult to get the licence. Now, I'm not one of those, big-headed arseholes. I'm a fairly reliable driver. I drive an old estate, Renault Megane estate, which is lovely. Gets about 70 to the gallon diesel. And I'm a careful driver, and I like driving. I'm conscientious on the roads. I like to be relaxed and chill out. And I can parallel park with the best of them, reverse park. I can do a lot of things, really. I practice pretty hard. And I still, take great care when I'm parking and stuff like that. I like to think, but here's the but. Driving HGV things, Jesus Christ. It's not easy. But anyway, I'm saying it because if you find yourself down on your luck and you're short of money and you don't know what you're going to do next, if you can manage it, do the HGV license. I say this because I understand that in the Northwest, if you go and speak to certain firms and they get a sense that you're not half a bad person, in some cases here in the Northwest, they're paying for the lessons and for the test. So it's not a bad thing to keep in mind. It's just interesting here that they're saying there's a lot of misogyny in the business and that the industry itself is being run by rotund, middle-aged white men. This same shit that you get all the time. No thought is given in the Times article to the fact that maybe most women just don't consider the idea of driving around big lorries around the country or driving them on the continent. Maybe it's not something that women in general consider. Maybe it isn't. But they throw in the misogyny thing again. And I don't know, it's something we're seeing time and time again. Misogyny, sexism. Well, maybe it isn't, Haulage firms probably couldn't give a shit, really. If you rock up to a haulage firm and you've got the licence needed to drive a truck, an 18-wheeler, I can't imagine that the businesses really are going to turn you away. They need 60,000 drivers in this country. And that's going to increase. So give me a fucking break. It's not misogyny. But anyway, it's just another one of these stories. This woman here has campaigned to get more women to do it. Ironically, in France, which is obviously a country I know a little bit about because of my own personal circumstances, in France, the term truck driver is used to refer to dykes, which I've always found amusing. French people, historically, have referred to short women with hardened features and short hair as truck drivers. Anyway, that's France. But there you are. That's a little public service announcement. They need truck drivers. Can you do the test? Can you get the licence? And for the crack, I was thinking, not this year, maybe not next year, but maybe in the near future, before it all becomes autonomous anyway, because pretty soon these things will be driving themselves. I thought I might have a pop at getting the licence. You can never have too many strings to your bow, right? Anyway. Same with bus companies. They want bus drivers. Bus companies in the UK are screaming for drivers. At one time, very poorly paid bus drivers. These days, not so poorly paid. I don't know. There you go. What else have we got for you today? This made me laugh. Elvis fans convinced that Elvis faked his death. This is in the Mirror today. It's in the Star as well. After he's overheard in unearthed video. Elvis is overheard. But not in a recent video. In a video that was recorded some time ago at Graceland. Makes me laugh, this. There you go. This is back when Larry King was on CNN, I think. And he was having a trip around Graceland with Priscilla Presley, because Elvis he would have turned 85 last week. And this is just nonsense, really. I don't know why we waste our time with this, but it's just something amusing on a Monday morning. Apparently, very early on in the clip, Elvis can be heard telling Larry King and Priscilla to turn left. And you can make your own mind.
Time left. We're back, and we're in the remaining moments. Not much.
No, you don't.
Time left. We're back, and we're in the remaining moments. Not much time.
Larry King Is there anything else before I take my leave of you? It's 20 past 10 now. It's time to move, time to get things done. Lots happening today. Anything else in the papers today? There is a bit actually, but I might save it for the radio show later on. There's a couple of articles about liberalism in the Telegraph, and there's another article or two about minding your P's and Q's in the workplace, because what you say in the workplace, even nonchalantly, even just a little comment with your closest workmate, might result in you being suspended or even fired. We might get into that later on as well. Okay, right, that's it then for this morning's live stream. Thanks for all your comments on there, and apologies for not reading all of them. I read some of them out earlier on. And I have got Caroline Stephens on the radio show today, and also, you ready? Jordan Maxwell returns to the Richie Allen radio show after months and months. Had a lovely chat with Jordan last night. He'll be back with me today. I can't wait for that. I love Jordan. It's been ages. So Caroline Stephens, very interesting woman. We'll be talking Lisbon Treaty, European Union, Northern Powerhouse, all this nonsense, new government. Very, very, very interesting woman. Very, very interesting commentator. She'll be on with me, and then Jordan Maxwell will join me in the second hour. So it's going to be an interesting show, I think, later on. Join me at 5 o'clock UK time as usual. Sun's come out in Salford, which is lovely. Until 5, it's bye from me.